It's true that we've got a really good insight into the performance of the electric vehicles from the exercise of the EV rally. I was really privileged to spend a day away from Newquay to Southampton, and the insights and the findings from the league table, sort of serving to prove the real world capability of these things.
And just on that, I tried to take credit for our conversation earlier that we came third, but not lose sight of the fact that I had a different co-driver with me every day, so I only drove part of the time every day. We had people that one or two people that had never driven a van before, let alone an electric vehicle. So even with people with that sort of limited driving experience, we still managed to get third place in the league table, which was great.
Yeah, so the old EV rally, and long live the EV rally, and I'll be delighted if I'm ever lucky enough to get invited again. It sort of proves what's possible, doesn't it, when a bit of innovation and collaboration.
Yeah, and it's really interesting year on year to see the advances in not just in technology but in infrastructure that we see. When I think back to the first year I did it was 4 or 5 years ago. The infrastructure has grown exponentially in that time. It's not a challenge so much now. It really was in the first year I did. It was a challenge to get around the country in an electric vehicle, but now I wouldn't hesitate to go anywhere in any electric vehicle.
The task for us now is just to demonstrate, it's a sort of viable real world solution for us, one that keeps the goods cold and the planet cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's here to stay, so we've got to make it work.
I do recall, Andy, that I think I read a white paper published somewhere, and it sort of consolidated the findings of a substantial survey of fleet managers that was sort of inquiring about, reasons why they did or didn't have electric vehicles on fleet, and considering and consolidating the findings.
Yeah,
I think in this case, something like 75 fleet operators were consulted, and therefore it's a reasonable size sample. And I think a bit surprisingly, probably it reflects on sort of campaigns of disinformation and perhaps a lack of clarity. I think something like 38% of those fleets found that there were no available electric vans that were fit for purpose. I mean, in what way? They move and they carry a load.
Yeah, I'm aware of that white paper, and for me, there was no surprises in that. It was the sort of thing that I hear on a daily basis from fleet operators, and a lot of it is based on myths. If I'm perfectly honest, myths and old information.
But the crunch is it's your job in Lex Autolease to demystify these things,
and things like the EV rally help do that.
And Green Fleet, the principal organizer, I really enjoyed the rally. I mean, I like the fact it's so much better than a regular show with a load of static exhibits, and a limited number of visitors. This really was a show on the road and a spectacle.
Because let's not forget, the rally consists of, upwards of 50 electric vehicles, all essentially taking the same route around the country.
Yeah.
And maybe not travelling in convoy as such, but because there's so many vehicles all taking the same route, it kind of stress tests the infrastructure. Yeah, so you can have 10 vehicles rocking up at the same time at a charging station, and it proves that the infrastructure actually is now starting to get fit for purpose. It didn't used to be, but now it's starting to get fit for purpose, and that'll be one of the things that was in that white paper is about charging infrastructure. And I touched earlier on about probably one of the biggest blockers is drivers that take their vehicles home at night and they can't charge them. Well, there's no quick answer for that, unfortunately.
No, there isn't. There are one or two sort of curbside solutions for charging that are emerging that aren't huge infrastructure projects of their own to install. But again, if you haven't got any road in proximity to your front door, which many people don't have,
that's right.
then that's still a problem.
To be honest, I don't know what the answer to that is. I haven't got a silver bullet, sadly. But some of the other challenges that we hear around, and we've already discussed them, around payloads and ranges, they're all starting to be debunked now because technology is moving on, battery technologies keep moving on, vehicle technology is moving on, and it's allowing you to do pretty much the same job with an EV as you could do with an ICE vehicle.
Yeah, the white paper in question, it also explored what would encourage fleet managers who didn't have any electric vans to start their EV transition unexpectedly. I think the biggest chunk of them wanted longer battery range. But in descending order, they included government subsidies to make it a more affordable proposition, and public charging that better suits the need of vans. But as you said,
that's improving.
The larger slots and so on. More choices from manufacturers. There is a full range, and anybody who's waiting for 2030 will probably regret it when they get there, when they find that there are supply chain difficulties as demand soars, one would expect.
Yeah.
And of course, the complaints about the affordability of public charging. And it is true that some public charging is pricey. I found some kilowatt hours for 85 pence the other day, which struck me as the most expensive I'd found, more expensive even than Tesla. But there's some great networks where you can easily get a decent 200 kilowatt supply for 43p an hour in some cases.
This is where we need a bit more help from the government, and perhaps address the VAT difference between public charging and home charging.
Yeah. So if you're a business that's VAT registered, that matters less. But if you're a small business who's not VAT registered, that means you've got to afford the full cost of the electricity plus 20% VAT. Whereas if you took your electricity from home, you've only got a 5% tax on the fuel there.
Yeah. And then if you've got the right tariff as well, it's cheap anyway. So,
in terms of the real world challenges faced by EV operators, the real world range was a factor, and that seasonality, and we touched on that. And I mean, maybe the evolution of the battery power will incorporate seasonal heating for the battery.
But I also say, is it a challenge? We're regularly seeing vans come to market now that have got a 200-mile range, and I accept that you won't get the 200 miles in the winter. But even if you were to get 150 miles, would you want your drivers driving non-stop for any more than that time without taking a break?
Yeah.
You've got to think of their safety and their comfort, haven't you? You would expect them to stop every couple of hours to take a break, wouldn't you? And why not plan that break into a charger? So what I say to people is, charge because you've stopped, not stop to charge. So if you think, right, I need a little comfort break, stop somewhere you know has got a charger, plug in where you go for your comfort break. Within 20 minutes, you've got another 150 miles range back in your battery.
Yeah, that's very sensible. And I fully understand why you're a proponent of that kind of point of view, because it is important if the government's facilitating access to these large, powerful vehicles to a wider variety of license holders, that, passing a driving test isn't a license, from my perspective, the way I look at it, to drive a commercial vehicle for a living.
No,
it's a different thing, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Being able to drive a vehicle is understandably one of the essential prerequisites, but there's a great deal to ensure the safest of environments for those who have to do it for a living. And, as the fleet manager, recognising some of the hazards that can arise as an outcome of different behaviours that arise. It's really important.
And a lot of fleets, they'll be able to do some effective route planning as well to make sure that the route they're delivering goods. So in the instance of the type of vehicles that you supply, your refrigerated vehicles, they're doing distribution job, aren't they? So, there's got to be a degree of route planning to make sure that the goods get to where they need to go at the time they need to get there. And if they've got effective route planning, they can plan in a route that will take in the suitable charging points.
Yeah, and everybody needs to find more efficient and productive ways.
Yeah, it's a change of mindset. It's a change of mindset.